us today.
Because, you know, we're cutesy like that.
Biscuit and Tea. We love a good British show. Okay, anyways. Today we're going to be doing homelessness.
Yes. Serious topic. I'm so ready.
So you guys are the most passionate about this one, yeah? So
where shall we start?
So,
first of all, I know you've seen Seattle is Dying, but if any of you haven't, please go watch it. It is a Como TV broadcast reporter, Eric Johnson, doing like an hour special just all about homelessness in Seattle specifically, but it kind of correlates all around Washington.
Yes.
So good.
what was that
so
noise? Oh my god. It was like a devil.
It's my political agenda. Demon.
She has a political agenda voice. Okay, go off. Continue on.
Not necessarily agenda, but
Go off, okay.
Okay, homelessness. So, essentially,
start us
the
off.
documentary like really describes how the homeless problem in Seattle is really more of a drug crisis.
It's more of a drug problem. There's a drastic difference between those who are like out of work and like actively on the job hunt, actively like searching for work to provide for their families, and those who are addicted to drugs and are living on the streets. And I feel like they all get clumped into one homelessness like bubble.
Yeah.
But they're two very, very different things.
Yes.
And that's what Seattle is Dying discusses the entire time.
Right.
The correlation between the two.
Actually, like, so out of like the 100 like recent convictions, like this is all in the documentary, from like the top like 100 convicted.
It was the frequent offenders.
Yes. So out of that, 100% were homeless and 100% also were drug users.
Showed signs of substance abuse.
So was it like interviews with them, or was it?
This was
There was one.
There were a few interviews, but this was the just like Seattle City Public Records list of like 100 repeat offenders between like. I honestly don't remember the list of like averages, but it ranged from like 34 crimes. It went up to like 70s.
It was like
and
76, I think, might have been the top.
That
one.
was, they were scrolling in the video, and so you saw some big numbers in there. And then less than 50%, I think it was less than 50% had been evaluated for like serious mental conditions.
So like taking a card of like when you're getting jured or whatever, saying like you're like the person's insane, or like
I'm honestly not sure. It just said like mental evaluations were done on less than 50% of them, and it didn't really say a result.
Well, like when they were arrested, like it only says that 50% of them were even tested to see if they had any like mental issues that were contributing to their homelessness and their drug addiction.
Gotcha. And so they had been taken off the streets, these repeat offenders, they were taken off the streets, like went to jail for a little bit, and then went right back out onto the streets just to do the same thing.
A lot of times
go back
for
to
one
jail.
night, even just one night, and then they just release them because the justice
Seattle
system
justice system specifically.
Yes.
So how did they
it's
propose to
unsustainable.
fix that? Was it?
Okay, I love this solution. Rhode Island, you've got it covered.
Oh yes.
Okay, so let me flip to my other page of notes.
I don't know. Turn the page.
I'm ready. So Rhode Island found a solution called the MAT program, which stands for Medication Assisted Treatment, and how I like to describe it is like it's like tough love, basically, is what it is.
You have to want it and able to be able to receive the treatment.
Yeah. So when people get arrested, they had a choice, remind me, isn't it, between like going to jail and like doing this program in jail? And it's like you can either go to jail and not do it or go to jail and do it.
Yes.
And most people chose the program itself, the MAP program. So they offer 3 opiate blockers to choose from: methadone, Suboxone, and Vivitrol. And so like these people can like choose which drug they want to go on to help them get off of drugs.
So the blocker is like a nicotine patch or something kind of idea, or is it?
Kind of for heavy drugs.
Yeah,
I
for
think
heavy
they
drugs.
talked a lot about heroin.
They talk a
especially.
lot about heroin, for sure.
Do they talk about how this like? Because the thing is, where we have to connect, we can't. It's hard because when people are begging on the side of the street, you can't assume that they're like. Oh, I get told all the time where it's like, oh, you can't give this $5 to someone because they're going to use it for drug money.
And that's so sad.
Yeah.
Right, so how do they, in this one, do they show that how it's like not all people are like this, or do they talk about?
It was really focused on how
focusing on
Seattle
the
is just so drug based.
Like it's different. Like I was saying earlier, like if you are in between work and stuff, there are like definite specified resources that you can go to and get the help and resources that you need. And the drug homeless population just doesn't necessarily pursue and take advantage of these resources in the same level, or if at all.
Right.
And so with the MAP program, there's a nonprofit in Kodak, named Kodak, which distributes the meds inside the prison. So they're the ones who like do it. And then once the prisoners get out, they have community centers where they can go and get their prescription, no questions asked, for like, I don't know if it's free of charge, but like no questions asked, they can get it done. And they just like, they help them continue once they get outside of prison so they can stay clean.
They follow up on them, and it actually said they have a 93% like success rate for people following up after they get released.
Wow. Yeah, so like Rhode Island is
on their game.
Rhode Island is flexing hardcore. I'm sorry.
I don't know if you can flex on a drug problem, but go ahead.
They're flexing on the solution.
On the solution, I mean that's a good thing. We flex on solution, not problem. I mean,
oh yeah, for sure.
Go off. Go. I'm just gonna go ahead and just.
I love you.
Cheers.
So their whole idea with the MAP program was to stabilize these people physically, and then once that first step is taken care of, they can get to the emotional turmoil work that needs to be done.
Yes.
And that's the step, like physical, then emotional, then like get them back out and help them live their lives. And there were like 2 or 3 people inside the prison who were in the program who were interviewed, and they all said that they were grateful for being arrested. Like they think that it saved their lives. Like all of them were like, if I hadn't been arrested, like
one of them would be dead right now.
Yeah, he was like, I'd either be dead or serving life. So like this program like saved my life. And one of them talked about his granddaughter and how he was like, she's the best thing in my life. And I was like,
I cried.
And in comparison though, there's like, you know, the TV shows based upon like jail and how bad it is, and like, you know, Beyond Scared Straight and like things like that.
That's
And
intense.
if you guys haven't seen what that show is, basically it goes through, it puts typically teenagers or a bit older sometimes people that are at risk of being put into prison or jail or whatever, they put these people into jail, and the whole point is to scare them straight, right? Is to like show them how bad jail can be and how like intense it is. So it's interesting to see like, does that show really help people not go to jail, or does this program, which is what, you know what I mean, where it's like, if you could almost look at the positive side of it, where I'm not saying America's prison, especially the private prisons and even the one, you know, we've talked about this in class many times. We've watched documentaries about how a lot of these prisons can be corrupt in their way, because there's people who have researched things where it's like, a lot of times, you know, because the more times people come in, the more times the more money that the prison makes, right? Where it's like, sometimes people have had some conspiracy that they don't have these kind of programs because they want to make that more money.
and that's where don't.
Yeah. Well, first of all, just don't.
Let's focus on human well-being, not on the profit.
Right. So that's one other side that I could see as being a problem, where it's like, I definitely support the rehabilitation part of it, but I can definitely see people having the perspective of, okay, but America's prison system is totally messed up in every way. Does this really help? But I definitely think it's important to see both sides of that. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Where it's like, can homeless be solved? Like, obviously, prison or jail is never preferable.
Never.
But if it's to a point where if this program and being caught for doing something, if that saves a person's life, that's worth it in the end. You know?
Yeah.
And the reason this is working is because all of these resources, like they had like mental health counselors and like resources like that, plus the drug program, all inside the prison. And so all of these resources were in one spot. It was accessible, and it was also working because like they couldn't leave.
Yeah, they didn't have any outside.
They didn't have any escape. They couldn't be like, oh, it's too hard, like I'm just gonna go back. It was like you're serving your sentence while getting treatment. So the two go hand in hand, and so overall you just work to get better.
And one reason this is so important and why it is in the documentary is because this is totally a possibility for Washington, for Seattle, because we have McNeil Island, which is an abandoned, like mostly abandoned correctional facility, and it's just sitting there not being used. So why don't we turn that into this like rehabilitation center where people can actually get help and get off the drugs?
And Seattle is Dying suggested, like, what if we also put job training in there so we could like
absolutely
help these prisoners who have like been incarcerated or like been struggling with drugs for years and years gain like a marketable skill and then be able to go out and like get a job like right off the bat and get back to their life.
Rejoin society.
Well, and I'm almost wondering how many people who are homeless didn't start out as drug users. But because of the environment they're in with other homeless people, that becomes their lifestyle after.
It's so accessible. And that's another like really big thing in this documentary that I found astounding is the fact that it is now to the point where you can have up to 2 grams of something such as methamphetamine on you, and the cops, they can't arrest the person, they can't do anything about that.
Really?
Because
Why?
they're so overrun. The justice system is just, it's so overrun that they just can't really make an impact. And so you have these people with these really heavy drugs just walking around downtown Seattle. And in some of the clips, you can see these people in the background going to work, or families even. I mean, one guy was in front of Nordstrom Rack. I'm like, it's terrifying to think that these people who a lot of times aren't in the right mental state, carrying these hard drugs or, you know, high off the drugs, are just there on the street corner.
And it's normal in a way to see like people who
have
are
become so
homeless.
accustomed to it, and that's so not okay.
Right, and it's like things where it's like when I was, I may have spoke about this before in our like sexual assault and that kind of topics before, but where it's like just walking down the street. I was in my homecoming dress with my friend, and this wasn't even in Seattle, this was in Bellevue, and there was like this man sitting on like the side of the street who was, I'm pretty sure he was begging, but I didn't have any money on me, and you know, unfortunately, we can kind of taught that as like women, and just as many people in general of like not to
don't pull over by yourself to help someone. Like you have good intentions, but they might not.
Exactly, and this guy was like kind of mumbling to himself, making comments to himself, and it was scary because I was in like a dress, and it was like, I wanted to remove myself, and I remember specifically this time that I just come home from a church camp when I was in like 5th grade, 4th or 6th grade, somewhere around that age. And we had talked about homelessness at the camp, and they were always saying, okay, well, you need to give to people whenever you can, whenever you see someone, give to them, and that kind of thing. And I remember seeing someone right by my local Safeway, and I was like, asking my mom when we were driving, I was like, oh, can we pull over and give this man like money? And she was like, you can, but I have to go with you, and we have to be careful, and we need to approach in a certain way, and like this whole thing. And I was like, this is a whole process to make it. So, and it's hard because you never know if these people are lying or not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know, they could be saying, oh, I have this, this, and this, and I need money, but they may not, and it's like goes ahead with like the way of like trusting other people, and you, as a human being, you want to trust each other.
You so want to help, but it's a problem of like, I want to help you in the correct way.
Yeah.
I don't want to enable you.
I don't want to give you money to go buy drugs. Like if you're saving it, maybe to find a place to live, or even buying food, like that's a completely different story then.
Right, and I've heard stories of people giving homeless people food, and I've even having like homeless people reject that food, where it's like I've heard that like directly from someone who's like, well, I tried to give this like guy a sandwich and he just didn't want it, and you know, they might be on something unfortunately, or they might just not want it for whatever reason, but like that's the thing too.
Accepting food can be a little sketchy.
That is true. Actually, that is
like,
that is very valid, because there's bad people on this planet.
Whether they're hungry or not, it's still.
That's actually really valid. I never thought of that perspective. That's
on the
interesting.
topic of food, though, I actually just remember this. There's this cafe. So I live in Olympia, and the homeless crisis there is actually expanding too, which is. I think it's been, since 2016, there's been a 56% increase of the homeless population in downtown Olympia. And
that's
downtown
Washington's
Olympia
capital,
it's
too.
It's not that big of a city.
Yeah.
So going downtown, it's honestly gone to the point where it's kind of scary. Like, I don't go downtown unless I have someone with me, because it's just not safe, which is sad. But there's this cafe, it's called the Wayside Cafe, downtown Olympia, and it is a really cool program where you can buy these like tokens, and you can give them to like, kind of like, it's like you buy a meal for someone else. So you can like go to the cafe and buy a meal for you, but also like kind of credit it to someone else, like a homeless person who needs a meal.
So would you give that person like this token, or would someone come in and be like, hey, can I get a free meal? And they'd be like, yes, someone paid for it.
Yes.
Okay.
So that, yeah, so they can come in and it's also like in a location where there is a lot of homeless people in the area. So I've been in there before and seen homeless people come in and get food.
Yeah, I've seen programs in like places like New York and Chicago. Well, I haven't like directly seen them, but I've seen little like, you know, the 60-second documentaries or like whatever they're called, where it's like it talks about how they employ people who are homeless and do that kind of stuff.
Right.
A lot of places that employ like people have very strict conditions. It's almost like I'm 17, I'm going through applying for summer jobs and whatnot, right? Yeah. And so many places are like, oh, you need this amount of experience, and it's like, okay, but how do I, as a 17-year-old who's never worked before in like this kind of situation?
Unless you hire me.
Right, and so exactly, and so many people, and I know you've worked before, and like so many people will lie on their applications all the time, and that's seen as almost like a normal thing. And I've never considered that before because it's like, well, they'll find out because if I don't know how to work a cash register, I'm pretty sure they'll figure it out.
Fake that.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like I may be involved in DECA, but hell if I know how to like do this amount of transactions, and it depends on the situation, because that's another thing where we can talk about how it's not just the government taking responsibility, it's the people, and it's the small businesses and the big businesses, right? So it's like, I know places like Chick-fil-A, a local Chick-fil-A that I'm aware of, employs a lot of people. They start employing at 15 rather than 16, which is a big deal for some. It's not illegal. They
just have them do like less work. They have them do
there's
like
minor
less
work laws, but there's certain. Yeah, Chick-fil-A does start employing at 15 though, at least in Washington. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's everywhere, all the Chick-fil-A locations, and I know Chick-fil-A is highly debated due to their evangelical connotations, and it's really hard with that kind of stuff because with the connotations I know it under is it's right by this academy that's specifically for at-risk people in Bellevue that one of my friends goes to. And several of those people are employed with Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A helps people who, like, at least in the location that I'm referring to, they do employ a lot of people who can be at risk, yet that's they support very not good, in my opinion, personal opinion, programs that are evangelical in that way, Meaning, like, when I say evangelical, I mean, like, very conservative, very... I don't have an exact list of the programs they support, but it's not very moral according to my beliefs. They're pretty liberal, but it depends on the person. And so it's like also the side of like each business has two sides of the story where it's like, oh, we don't employ these kind of people because A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. And so once you see that, then it's like, okay, I can understand why they may not employ homeless people, or they may not do this because.
Yeah. But when does the stereotype of a homeless person?
And I think
where's the line?
I think that's where we really need to get to the like. I don't know if root is the right word, but we need to like differentiate and find like which came first, the chicken or the egg. Like, did the mental illness and the drug issue come first, which caused them to be homeless, or did the homelessness cause this mental illness and this drug? And how can we like cut it off at the root? Because that's where the problem is coming from. And so, like...
And I know not all homeless people are into drugs or
anything
like that. So maybe we stop putting that stereotype. But how do we know how to tell the difference between
you don't.
someone who actually needs help and someone who...
Yeah, and so that's why I think this, like, tough love situation, at least for the drugs, is gonna work. Mm-hmm. I'm not entirely sure. Like, I think it's great, these, like, companies that specifically employ homeless people to, like, get them off their feet and like get this job training to make it applicable and like help get things restarted. But with the drug thing, Seattle is Dying said the more money going into to fix the problem, the worse it gets, because these people think like, oh, the government's just gonna take care of me, like I don't have to do anything, I'm just gonna be taken care of. And so it's a matter of finding the balance, exactly like we said, like which came first, which like category of homelessness do you fall under, and how can we help how can we help get you back on your feet in a specific way that will like be administered directly to you and help you specifically.
Because like with the drugs, for instance, like there's, you know, like people give clean needles, like free clean needles, so they're not using dirty needles. But okay, sure, you're preventing them from using dirty needles, but you're not stopping them from using
one
the
of the
drugs in
issues
first place.
that I need to think about my opinion on.
I need to know more information because
Right.
there's so many pros and cons with the clean needle deposit.
Or just safe injection sites. That's a really debated topic, and the reason why I haven't brought it up, or like we've done an episode on it, at least for me personally, is it's one of the things, I'm very passionate about many things, as I'm sure you could tell by now. We're halfway through the season. I think you can have a bit of an intuitive guess on how passionate a person I am. But I don't know. It's like similar to my stances on death penalty are very, it depends, and I don't have a strong opinion on it. Well, you know, again, but with safe injection sites is also something where I'm like, well, does it stop potential deaths or potential like whatever? Yes, but does it encourage? Kind of, you know? Because some people don't do these things because it's dangerous. So now if you're creating a safe option, so if you would exactly.
Safe option.
And so if you guys would like to discuss it with us below, feel welcome to, because I want to know if you're really for this, if you're really against this, let us know.
I see the pros and cons. Tell me why.
Yeah, because it's hard to tell, especially for me as a person who isn't, like, I don't know my side exactly. Yeah. Help me develop a side, you know?
Yeah.
What else do we have? So there's the drug problem, right? But then what about the families? You know, people who are homeless as a family. Just the other day, it was so heartbreaking to see. I saw this mother and 2 children on the side by the street, right by Safeway, and it was hard to tell what was going on because it was like, this woman clearly had a family.
Yeah.
So it's not that you can lie about having 2 people next to you, you know, that you can see them next to the person, right? And so it's in that situation, it's like, okay, there are shelters, but are these shelters effective? Are they available?
Are they safe?
Yeah, because I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
My brother is going to be pursuing construction management, and so he was a part of an ACE program in Seattle, which is like a construction company, and they did a project the entire year. And it was build a transitional housing facility with like X, Y, and Z. And it was like, they had like sleeping pods in there just to get homeless people off the streets for a night, just to like get them somewhere safe and warm with like food and stuff. They had like the secondary room, which was like a single person, like 6-week stay to like a year, like midterm. And then they had the long-term stay, which was for like families who were working on the job hunt, getting back into the workforce, providing for children who also needed to go to school.
Right.
And so like I think just having situations like that, like I imagine, or like I don't necessarily imagine, but I hope that the homeless shelters in our areas, our respective areas, are doing what they need to do and like providing the safe resources.
And how do you know that it is providing safe resources?
Yeah.
Because how do you know people don't go there to hide their drugs or like get away? Like you don't.
It's like I want to assume the best, but I also want to be realistic in how we can help it, and finding that balance is quite difficult.
Right, because schools are supposed to be safe places, yet people do hide substances behind bricks and things like that.
Yep.
In an area where I live, that it's considered a bubble to live in because we are very fortunate and very privileged, yet people still will walk into the bathrooms and do drugs and walk right out.
Yeah.
People get suspended monthly because of this kind of thing.
Oh, for sure.
And so it's like...
Well, I don't think you're ever going to get away from that.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I don't think drugs are ever going to go away. Like, there's no way to fix an entire problem, but even just, like, helping it a little bit and making it less of a stereotype, I feel like does more than
and it's also
anything else.
With, like, there's this song, like, Same Drugs Anymore. Have you guys heard that where it's like, oh gosh, I don't remember who it's by, but...
Is that the one by Chance? Wait.
No,
No?
I'm sure there's a song about that as well. But basically, it's there has a lyric where it's like got the drugs from Big Pharma. So basically, it talks about how
song for sure. Okay.
It talks about how a lot of times drugs are almost encouraged by pharmacies and that kind of stuff because and doctors and because we
just not even that long ago, I don't know exactly what year, but you know, drugs like heroin have been used for medical purposes. So let's keep that in mind.
Well, and like there was like the opioid crisis.
Yes.
Yeah. So like I actually met a guy who was addicted and had to like go through a lot to get off of them.
Well, yeah, and we're supposed to be careful. So as a person, I do take medication for certain things, right? And I do take Adderall, which is can be considered very addictive, right? And it has to be, you know, I'm always cautioned to be careful, but it's something where it's like, okay, well, I need it, but does that mean I'm addicted? Not necessarily. It means I just need it to function in school or to function in A, B, or C. So it's hard to tell the difference because are these pharmacies, are they encouraging it or are they trying to help the problem? It's like you can never
tell a person's
another
topic.
Yeah, we're getting into
this is a whole thing.
Everything is related to everything, you know?
So much, yeah.
And so it's kind of like, okay, how do you solve the problem of homelessness without assuming things? How do you solve the problem of drugs with homelessness without assuming things?
Yeah, it's like, it's the little categories of homelessness, because like, it's so different, and we need to make sure that it's safe, and it's like, we want to help you, but you also have to want help.
Right,
and that's a huge thing.
That's a huge factor, is they have to actually
and I
want
feel like
to change and want the help.
I would certainly hope that most people would want to get help, but I don't know how a drug addicted mind would function.
But then there's also financial issues behind homelessness.
Oh yeah.
Because for example, I know at least in Washington, when you declare bankruptcy, it no longer claims you exempt from student loans. Those don't go away. So
this Western Washington, the price of living has gone up so high,
it's insane.
and the money people receive has not matched that.
Yeah.
So you need to be making more money to be able to live in Seattle or Western Washington or anything, and it's like,
yeah, because then it gets on the topic of, okay, well, does minimum wage need to be raised? And that's a whole different conversation, but that can also be related to homelessness. All these problems can easily be related to homelessness, and it becomes difficult when you have to try to assign certain things with a problem, right? Because there's always going to be different stems of a problem, and I think that's why we can't eliminate homelessness, or that's why we can't eliminate drug problems, because there isn't just one start you can eradicate, right? Where it's like
there's so many factors.
And I also think nothing can ever be
fully.
Nothing's ever gone.
Yeah.
Where it's like, because that's the thing where it's like.
Well, because like even animals that have gone extinct, well, there still remains somewhere. So
Yeah.
like nothing is ever gone.
Mm-hmm. And it's also like, you know, how the Great Depression, that's over. However, we still live from these effects every day. There's been programs like the antitrust laws and all this other stuff that we have certain programs, we have certain laws set in place because of certain circumstances. So are they really gone? No, they affect us every day because of the way we live and why we live the way we do, right? And so that's the thing with like homelessness, right? We live a certain way, even if we aren't homeless, right? If I live in my home every day and I'm thinking, okay, well, there might be a child who's not living this way, right? And that doesn't, just because I'm not affected by it, doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah.
Which is a big problem.
And that's a huge thing in our society. Like, the people who, like, tweet out and say, like, oh, I don't enjoy politics. I don't like banter in that. And it's like, well, you are lucky enough to not have to fight for your rights through political access.
Yeah, I had this thing where I wanted to know why people, I try to get both sides whenever I can, when I can.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I had people when, on one of my social media platforms, I was discussing, like, do you identify as a feminist, why or why not? And a woman had used the excuse of, oh, I just don't want to get involved in politics. Are your own rights considered politics to you? You know what I mean? Where it's
like, homelessness is here, we are here.
Anyway. That's just the classic tangent of what I do as a person.
No, for sure. Like,
we love your tangent.
Like you said, it's all connected. It's all connected. And it's like homelessness is connected to drugs, and then I think the main thing is that we need to like be willing to help people, but we need to like cater to people's needs. We don't need to assume, and we need to be safe in doing so.
Well, and I know that where I live, like sometimes they'll just put blockades somewhere, so homeless people
and that's not
can't be there, and it's like
that's
not fixing anything.
That's not another place.
You're just moving them to somewhere
and
else.
And they put like blocks on benches. You know, have you guys seen that where it's like on benches there's like a separator between two sides of the bench, so that way you can't lay down on it. First of
not
all,
fixing the
like that's
problem.
you're just discouraging and putting spikes on certain things. So like, except if it's like a fence and you don't want someone to get in there, that's one thing. But it's like purposely trying to threaten someone's safety and well-being just
And where
to
I
discourage
live,
it.
that has been a thing.
Yeah.
Like they'll put something up with spikes in it so people won't sit there, and it's like, but
That's
you're not
not
helping the problem
solving
at all.
You may be helping it for you, or if they go, I don't want dirty people on this bench. Well, how about you like get those
provide
dirty
a good
people somewhere
resource
else?
somewhere safe to go. That's not this bench.
How about you like write a sign, something simple as like putting up signs or information somewhere, because sometimes sources may be available, but they may not be accessible.
Yeah.
Available and accessible are two different things, in my opinion. They could be seen. They could be seen as synonyms in the dictionary. But it depends on everyone's. Just because something is there doesn't mean that someone can get it. Where it's like just because a shelter is there, that very well be like overcrowded and not be able to have any more else. And can you imagine that?
And you don't know what's in that shelter.
Right.
Who's in that shelter.
And
what
how they're gonna
doing.
turn away someone. They're gonna look someone in their eye and be like, I'm sorry, we don't have any room. You're gonna have to go back on the streets another night. That's
so wrapping up the topic of homelessness with the neat little bow that it is.
I don't even know how to wrap presents but we're not gonna get on that
Dude,
hole.
I'm so good at
No, you know what? We're gonna. Oh gosh.
We're gonna kick the table.
We're
already.
gonna unwrap. We're gonna unwrap the topic of homelessness. We're gonna untie that cute little bow that society has put on it, and just like open that box up and be like, hey.
Oh, she
we're
backpedaled.
opening
She
the conversation.
backpedaled. She's like, oh,
We're not gonna close it. We're gonna actually open it up.
We're
Like,
opening the conversation.
Yeah,
We
in
want
the
to hear your
comments.
guys' input and what you think good solutions.
like,
and
what do you think the government should be doing? What do you think we as like
a community.
a community who has access to resources that we aren't necessarily sharing? Like, what should we be doing? How should we be helping?
And why don't you give us our input on one more thing? How do you like this format? You probably noticed that we changed it a little bit. Let us know. Do you like it? Do you hate it? If you hate it, be nice about it. We're sensitive. Okay.
And should we have Biscuit here for every episode? What do you guys think?
Say yes.
Please say yes.
You need to
I'm
try to get the
obsessed.
tea, so you're good. See, Biscuit's a neutral component of this.
Yes.
We may be screaming, Biscuit's napping. It's a nice
It's a
little
nice
break.
balance.
It's a nice
balance.
balance. calmer.
It gets the calm of myself. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, let us know everything you want to in the comments in Sounds of
Please
Relativity.
like and subscribe for more of us.
And if you want a different perspective, check out the rest of Blue Forge on YouTube. There is I Am Dax. There is Joyful Heart Race. There are so many opportunities and so many different perspectives on very similar topics that we're covering. So like
with a different point of view, as in people who are of color, not people who are Gen Z. We have all the different kinds of point of views on Blue Forge Films. Check them out.
Yeah.